Ever since, it was many years ago now, I began to look into the Franklin cover-up scandal. I've realized, although much more so recently, how widespread the deepest, darkest, black, satanic, evil, hideous secret that goes on around the world is. And I still don't even have sight of the end of it. It's actually probably bottomless. By the way, if you want to learn anything about the Franklin cover-up issue, John DeCamp wrote a book about it. Child abuse, Satanism, murder, all the rest. That really opened the door. I remember doing this years ago and actually received some odd communications from people like, are you crazy? What are you doing? There weren't any death threats, but it was clear that it had upset some people. Back with us tonight is Linda Stone, who has written a book about multi-generational Satanism, satanic rituals. You can click on her name. The book is called The Family Tree. She's been on once before. It was an extraordinary experience, and we're going to do it again tonight and take a look at another angle or two of this most incredible conspiracy that goes to the highest levels and is predicated on sheer evil, which is apparently not only extant in and of itself, but quite addicting to those who are initiated into it. Linda, welcome back.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Can you hear me all right?
You're loud and clear.
I like how you started the call out with the Franklin cover-up. I saw on the news tonight on the Internet that a former Los Angeles elementary school teacher was arrested for bondage photos of 24 of the children that he had in his classroom, and it turned out to be 30 children. And I mean, it just goes on, this stuff.
Unbelievable. And that's just, the old cliche. It's the tip of the iceberg. It's not even the tip. The point is, this goes way back. This may go all the way back and into recorded history. We don't know. It's evil, and it's here.
Now, one of a really good book I read, The Highest Altar by Patrick Tierney, journalist who was doing Peruvian archaeological, anthropological
research, excavations.
Yeah, research.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it's a fascinating book as well. I would recommend people read mine, then read that, because he makes the point in his experience with, going back 2,000 or, at least 2,000 years. I think it was longer, of finding a mummified human sacrifice of a child, and
right.
And in his experience, finds that it's still going on today. And he makes a very poignant point, which is, why did we think it ever stopped?
Why did we think it ever stopped? Exactly.
And all civilization was based on human sacrifice.
Yeah, and it never stopped, and that's part of the game. People don't see it. It's hidden, and basically it's kept hidden under the threat of death. People get removed for talking about this stuff.
Right, and the problem with that in today's world is everything is based on image, right?
All image, style over substance, absolutely, cradle to grave.
And so our stereotypes that are implanted in our brains through media and just being in society today, the stereotypes of images that are created in our mind continue to keep us in the dark about what's really going on. And that's what my book really shows. That my book is really best read as a profile case, because it's such a classic case. I've had so many experts in the field of satanic ritual abuse tell me this is a classic case. So if a person reads it with that in mind and looks at the profile, that there was, what is the symptomology I was living through with my children? There was chaos. There was a confusion. There was mind manipulation that occurred consistently. And there was, a chaos out of order. Nothing made sense.
Right.
And that's because when people get to the chapter on my daughter divulging over a few-year period, and of course it's all put in one chapter, what was really going on then it was like the light bulb went off.
Right.
But when I was exposed to this and married to a Satanist, and I was not raised in it, so I had no clue.
You had no idea, none.
Well, no, and that has been a real sticking point, and I'd like to point that out to people, that they most likely know someone, or have known someone, or have even someone that they are close to, that they would maybe not even have a clue that this was going on. And
the person involved may not have a clue either, of course.
Possible. Because, what is really going on is so sophisticated. There's such, an expert psychiatric type of system that's created in the mind, with mind control and dissociation and triggers and such, that a proverbial Manchurian candidate is created. And the problem with this is it goes on generation after generation. Now, I've defined this as an addiction to evil that's been perpetrated on generation after generation, at a minimum from the 14th century, in families.
Wow.
And so, like all families who are addicted to evil, that becomes more sophisticated, because the acts that are being committed are not, accepted. They're just not acceptable for people to be running around openly murdering, or openly, involved in cannibalism, or all kinds of sex abuse, anything you can imagine. How about the addiction to power and money? What was that?
Anything you can imagine goes on, and that's the part that is unimaginable to most people.
Right.
It's so over the top that the average mind cannot begin to even come close to wrapping around it, even for a moment. It just doesn't work. You mentioned several things that are very important. When a young boy or young girl is sexually abused, violated, raped, anything you can imagine and things you can't imagine happen to these children. They are, from what I've been told over the years, and this goes back to my work with the Franklin and then the McMartin preschool case, the children literally, it is so horrific what is being done to them. They leave their bodies. They go. And a substitute personality or consciousness, it's a ringer, takes over to actually preserve them and protect them from dying of the horror of it. Now, this is a very oversimplified way of stating it, but they then, in many cases, become mentally controlled by the horror of it, by the very torture, the agony of having been exposed to this. They are subjugated. And this gets to be really complicated, but it's something that explains why children never talk about it. Many of them can't talk about it because they don't actively relate to it. Is that correct?
Yes. And dissociation is, when you watch the news even, and you see, that every day there's murders and rapes and this kind of thing.
Right.
But then when you read or hear the stories, on 60 Minutes or on documentaries of people who've experienced just even one attack in their life, there's such a dissociation and a resultant post-traumatic stress disorder that occurs that, there's just this consistent triggering of dissociation that occurs
Would
from
you define,
one event, much less continual events.
Right. For our listeners, Linda, define dissociation for us so we can all get a good grip on that word all together here.
What I think what you described is pretty right on. When any kind of traumatic event occurs, the human mind in its survival state, especially in a younger child, has to leave in order to survive. It's a strong survival mechanism in order to survive the event, whether that's in war or with a traumatic event occurring.
Right.
To a child, such as you said, sex abuse, just much less murder and cannibalism.
Oh, these kinds of things can happen in wartime too. They can happen. I mean, it's not. It's just something that overwhelms the conscious body to the extent that the mind, the personality, the alter ego, the ego, it all goes away.
No,
it all goes away.
Has to leave.
It has to.
and people describe it, it actually is like a floating up on the ceiling.
Right.
And watching from, from up on the ceiling.
Right. Now, how are these, like, there was the Johnny Gosch case, of course. I had his mother on the program. How is it that these children, or young, even preteens, whatever, are mind controlled after the event? Let's say that a young boy is violated 20, 30 times. How does the control mechanism work?
Well, that's a complex subject, Jeff, but it would be most simply defined as, first of all, when it's normal human reaction that when just a rape or sex abuse or sex act occurs to a child, that they feel what? Guilt. They feel like it's their fault.
Sure.
Their self-esteem, whatever self-esteem they had, is gone.
Right.
Gone. It makes one feel dirty. And then what the irony of that is the human body responds to it. I mean, everyone has normal human responses to pleasure, and then when pleasure and pain are mixed together, the poor body is incredibly confused. The mind is dissociated, but yet it becomes a very physical response, and so that creates a tremendous confusion.
This can actually lead, can it, to a lifetime of poor health, physical health? It has to.
Yeah, because of the adrenaline, cortisol, flight or fight, trauma that's always going on, and it's going on 24/7 for a child that's being, put through this pure hell.
The idea that this is going on all over the country, all over the world, at practically every level of power and authority, even the local level, it doesn't matter, is something else that most people can't understand. Now, how is it that they cover all this up? One of the ways is that they present deviancy in the media as being so outlandishly obvious, right? Is this not true?
Oh, absolutely. And then once, back to the images that are created by the media in our society is, what was my first image that popped in my head of a Satanist when this finally broke open? Satanist broke open. And I'm like, Satanist? Anton LaVey? Michael Aquino? Charles Manson? On and on and on.
So People magazine types of figures would...
Right.
Yeah.
And it's never been really understood by the non-Satanist person who hasn't really grasped this, that this type of behavior is occurring with your image of attractive, wholesome, Dorothy from Kansas, Ozzie and Harriet, that these types of acts and these people are presented in society as great people. They're in church, they're wholesome, they're honored and respected in the culture and
they're congressmen, they're senators, they're business leaders, they're mayors, they're city councilmen. It doesn't matter. Yeah,
usually, and the children are raised for all those generations to become a powerful person in your day world. A judge, a lawyer, a politician. The more money you have, the more power you have, because those are the ultimate addictions, right? Money and power. That kind of encompasses all the rest of the evil. If you have and here's the thing about addiction: you can never have enough. It's insatiable.
Absolutely, right. Never too much money. That's the part that people also don't. It's a psychopathic world that these people live in. The banksters, the gangsters, the criminals. How much is too much? Well, they just don't seem to get. There's no way they can get too much. They want more, always more.
And then that translates into murder becomes mass murders. Tyrants versus leaders.
Well, they become wars ultimately.
Right, because you can never have enough evil. It's never satisfying.
And these people thrive on death and suffering on a mass scale. Yeah. Look what just happened to Libya. Look what's about to happen to Syria and Iran, and look at World War I and World War II. Those are mass bloodlettings orchestrated by people who do exactly as you just said. They thrive and lust for evil.